Aren't you glad it's All-Stars season? What? Don't boo me. Hi, hello everyone, my name is Jer, and look how orange you look, girl. All-Stars 11 is off to a solid start, and based on track record of season 10 of All-Stars, that tracks, considering that orange bracket, in my humblest opinion, was the least meddled with bracket, with the exception of one singular makeover episode, but who's counting that? It had the most surprises, it had the most consistent judgment, and I think season 11 is following a similar format. It's quickly pointed out on episode 1 that this is a sort of old school meets new school, with Mystique, Morgan, and Airaia representing classic Drag Race. And while Airaia was on All-Stars 6 very recently, she's always had that refined sensibility of those pre-season 7 queens. Those queens that are just not too bothered by the camera or the reality TV of it all. They're just there to present their drag and do their very best and compete. And then the new school of queens, Dawn, Morphine, and Lucky, who are fresh off the boat off Drag Race, they're more aware of the cameras and that voyeur effect of reality TV. They're there to sell their pre-packaged sound bites, their branding that they already established first time around. And this group is refreshing to me because we're seeing dynamics play out that I quite frankly was not expecting to happen. We're seeing some bonds tighten up while others are falling apart very quickly, which was not on my expectation checklist. Today's beverage is very simple.
Doll domination and dollification.
I spent 3 hours after Drag Race making this look. I was up till like 7 in the morning, stoning and sewing and patterning this. I had a bunch of fabric that I found very recently, and I thought this seemed super funky and 80s, 90s vibe, so I thought it worked for the challenge. Episode 1 kicks off season 11 in a very similar way that All-Stars 10 did with a performance challenge, to a song that I quite enjoyed. I liked the production of the song, I liked the set they used, and I thought the melody was excellent. The queens are tasked with writing their own lyrics to this song, as well as self-choreographing, which caused some tension to crop up immediately. I was surprised that despite the kumbaya of this group, there was a fair amount of tension in comparison to last year's Orange group, who had pretty much no static. The gag of this season is that only 2 queens will progress to round 2. On one hand, I'm okay with this because it makes for a much tighter competition. Ooh, tight. But I would love a couple extra episodes in the second half to make up for the fact that it's whittling down so severely. Even just one episode pre-merge so that all of the queens that didn't make it could lip sync battle to try and gain a spot in the second group. This twist sends some of the queens into a free fall because they were not expecting this. They were expecting last season's rules to be in effect. And so now there's even less wiggle room. It's like the same adjustment that they made from All-Stars 4 to All-Stars 5. Those queens were not ready for that format change, and it affected their entire game. Now I mentioned my one little nasty hand. On the other hand, I don't like this twist at all because it doesn't allow for some of those queens that have been off the show, like Mystique, for 16 years to get even less screen time now. And there is that part of me that thinks, okay, if Mystique or Vivacious, even April, were cast on a regular All-Star season, all tea, all shade, they probably would only make it 2 or 3 episodes as is. And so I think, okay, well, that's probably how much time they would get allotted normally, so maybe it's not the worst. They get at least 3 episodes that they probably would have already gotten on a regular season. But then there's that surprise element like the Irene last year, or even the Morgan this year. These queens come in and surprise and shock us that they've gotten better since last time. So we're robbed on one hand of these queens' time that maybe could have been longer, but also I like that the competition is more competitive, even though this is reality TV first. And what's tricky for me is that I want All-Stars to be a 16 episode extravaganza. I would much rather mainline Drag Race be 12 to 14 episodes so that we can establish who they are, get their brands identified, and then root for them to come back, and then we get to see them slay for a very long time on All-Stars. Flip that budget. Flip that budget around. So let's get into the bulk of this episode, and as usual, I will be ranking each one of the performances as well as the runway looks as I felt they did in the episode. And remember, these are just my opinions. And I'm just covering episode 1 in this video. Episode 2 will be out very shortly. And while we're edging, make sure to check out the Patreon if you would like to support my channel, or there's also the Extravaganza Extra membership. You can watch videos ahead of time. And if you're subscribed to the Patreon, you can listen to my podcast as soon as the episodes are ready, rather than waiting for them to be queued here on YouTube like 2 weeks out. In my 6th position, I'm very sad to report, is Mystique Summers, a queen I was very excited to see here. It's been 16 years since her last appearance. That's crazy. And with her being here, she's actually the last eligible season 2 contestant to now appear on All Stars. I think tying off season 2 as the season with everybody that could competing on All Stars. The only 2 queens that have never competed and never will are Sahara, for obvious reasons, may she rest in peace, and the other, Tyra, who I think the show probably just wants to pretend doesn't exist anymore. So it's kind of a big deal that every season 2 queen has now appeared on All Stars, and it very likely may be the only season that gets that, since there's one queen from season 3 who I think just became one with the sun, and a queen from almost every other season that just doesn't do drag anymore. So Mystique's presence is welcome here, she just didn't bring it the way that she needed to. And somewhere in the midpoint of the episode, she mentioned just wanting to coast, which is terrible strategy if you're trying to win $200,000 and at least 50,000 Raven Simone. But if you're here to key, then coast away, diva. I love her personality. She seems so joyous this time around, which is very nice to see. And she's just been a good time in the confessionals. She developed a bond with Lucky, and I enjoyed the kinship that they've created already, even if Morgan thinks that it's a stunt to get extra points. In the Maxi Challenge, she looked like an old lady cameo from a music video. Like, somebody brought their granny to set and she jumped on in to do a little segment, like a friend of, but is not the star. And I think that's a problem because in a maxi, you should look like the star. I liked her braids, but I think the look overall from the neck down was a bit pedestrian for what an all-star season requires, and it simply didn't cut it for how little she knew the lyrics that she wrote herself, on top of them not being very memorable. She brought up her weight loss a few times, which I think is beautiful. Love that as someone who is also on a weight loss journey, but it doesn't tell me much about who she is outside of that identity of losing weight, and she's so much more than that. I did like her callback line to Valentina's read to Latrice from All Stars 4. Mystique was not a mistake. As someone who has a major Drag Race brain rot, that made me smile. And on the runway for Latoya's Are Us, very cute title by the way, she was referencing what many of the others in the room did, which was her run in Moulin Rouge in Paris. I love Mystique in these shades of purple. It suits her complexion really well, and it's an homage to her mother, who passed recently before filming, so I appreciate the sentimental value that this has. I most definitely hated that nude illusion since it was so matte, it lacked color and dimension, plus it was quite the departure from the original materials in that Latoya look. Which look, listen Linda, listen. Not everyone is gonna have an insane costuming budget. Not everyone is gonna have all the money to get the exact glittery sequin materials that you're gonna need for this type of costume. I'm empathetic to that to a degree. But the tights being completely no matchy to the rest of the body, that fringe being so thick and not dispersed in a flattering way, I think was a kind of a huge disadvantage to her when her performance already wasn't good. This wasn't going to get her any type of top placement. It is sadly a chop of the look for me. I'm sorry. I do believe after this episode that Mystique is most definitely not going to bracket 2. She just doesn't have the momentum behind her to get through the next challenge. And with her mentality of just wanting to coast and vibe this episode, that doesn't really lend itself to knocking it out of the park, but something tells me she's not gonna be too heartbroken about not making the second round. I will say, as my last thought about her, her facial expressions all episode were giving me life. I love that she is simultaneously so aware of the camera and how she wants to pose herself, but also is just coming off very genuinely and naturally. Like, she's about to say whatever thing has come into her brain, not pre-planning it, and it's sort of like, oh, the camera's there? Da-da-da-da-da. In my 5th position is Lucky Stars, who is definitely getting my award for Queen Who Just Talks and Says Stuff. Her energy all episode was giving, this edible isn't doing anything. I guess I'll take another. For her stage entrance look, Rue saying that this is what coronavirus looks like now was nuts! She's looking absolutely tittylicious. I'm here for the messy game that she is playing with Morphine. She's giving confusion in all of her presentation, and that is throwing off everyone because they don't know how to handle her. And I love that they just don't know what she's saying half the time because she's just talking. Rue challenged her in her walkthroughs to push outside of her box. And Lucky said, well, I got eliminated last time for just being ultimate womanity. I was giving you the only woman ever on Earth and you guys just couldn't take it. And Rue was like, I don't know about all that. I do think that Lucky pushed herself in all areas this week. I like this Lisa Frank bonanza of a look for the performance. That's Lisa Frank, right? That's not the diary. I liked her reference to her talent show, but talking about squirting lemonade into the paper cup was disgusting, but so good. Some people are into those yellow hankies and I love that for them. On the runway, she was very Puss in Boots in lilac. I love, love, love that hat on this big curly hair. I love the way that she does drag, that it is in her vision and it is always uniquely Lucky. But I agree with the judges. I think that it was missing something, and that was the foxtails. I think that would have really pulled the look together. When you're doing an illusion, you have to commit fully, and I think the half-assedness on the lower half of the costume cost her higher points. She did say something that made me gutturally laugh though. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and I'm holding it all in my pussy. And then immediately like, I don't know what that means. Just talking and saying stuff. But I live. Her look was a soft slay on the runway. In my fourth position, I guess, is Airaia. She looked so unbelievably sickening in this white feather gownetry for her entrance look, giving opulence and camp. She is so breathtakingly gorgeous, and I'm very happy to see her here. She was mistreated badly on All Star 6, given 1 or 2 low placements that I don't agree with, and I think that messed with her mentals quite a bit. And so I'm ready to see her get some flowers because I think she's a genuinely lovely person and I want good things to happen to good people. Rue brought up in walkthroughs that she thought Airaia was done with the show, a prompt that I wasn't expecting Rue to bring up. That seemed a little fourth wall breaking for Drag Race. Airaia says that she's healed from her last time on All Star 6, and it was very clear that there was more happening in that conversation than what was actually shown based on how she was reacting to Rue. I wish that we could have heard a little more of those encouraging words that I'm sure Rue gave to her, because Rue is very good at that when they let her be. I liked a lot of what Airaia's lyrics wanted to be in the challenge, but she was majorly missing the lip syncing, and Michelle clocked her for that, and I'm glad that she also included that she wasn't the only one. Michelle, I think, is still seeing red from Kenya not knowing half of her lip sync words, and she's gonna be on the warpath of every queen that comes in her direction that does not know their lyrics properly. And I think she should. I'm not sure what the fashion prompt was for this challenge, but Airaia seemed off theme to me somehow. Her look was definitely giving me 80s ladies of wrestling meets superhero comic book character with that big mohawk styled hair, which was fierce, but stuck out maybe in the wrong way to me. On the runway, she is the only queen to not do a Moulin Rouge reference. She instead referenced Atlantic City 1988, Gold and Black, and holy this is an entire moment. Black and gold sequin is already god tier choice for drag queens, I think, but my god, this mermaid skirt with the bow is doing it. For me, it's doing it. If this challenge was purely based on runway, Airaia would snag it for me for the week because this was it, and I love that she thought outside of Moulin Rouge. But taking her performance into consideration, it is just shy of top 3. Her look is max slay. In my third position is McMerkels featuring some chest hair in confessionals. I'm very here for the energy of if you can't see it, I'm not shaving it. I used to shave my legs in drag, and then I would put on 14 pairs of tights to hide the lines of my padding. And I felt real puss, but I realized I did not need to be serving that much womanity underneath my padding and underneath my tights. So I just stopped shaving and I felt much better about myself afterwards. Good for Morgan. Her entrance look was giving me art. Art. Did somebody mention art? I was excited to see her slay these first 2 episodes, and I'm looking forward to what she does in episode 3. During walkthroughs, Rue brings up that Morgan is really good in the nightclub and brings up that there are some girls on Drag Race who are genuinely very, very good at nightclub, but don't always bring that to Drag Race. Like, it just doesn't translate. To which Morgan fills in the blanks and connects the dots that she's just one of those girls who's very good at drag, which is true, but not good at Drag Race. She's the OG archetype of that queen. There are so many of them that go on the show. In the challenge, the irony of her line, no stunts, no flips, after she kicked off her verse with a cartwheel off of crates, peak irony, S tier. Her performance and lyrics were amazing, certainly better than what she crafted for Kitty Girl. But I'll be honest, I didn't learn a lot about who she is other than the fact that she's the tea, which is Morgan's brand. She is the tea. It's hard not to be mesmerized by her star power because she's got that in buckets, but I just don't know if it was enough to persuade me that she was the best of the night. Granted, it was the surprise element. On the runway, I loved the bodysuit of her look. The stonework on it was fabulous. She captured the essence of this look and nailed almost all of it. What I will say is that the foxtails looked a little phallic-y, dildo-y almost. Maybe I'm just nasty and that's very possible. I can see from the source inspiration that there are these white foxtails with red tips that break up all that animal on LaToya's original look. And I think Morgan needed to disperse some of that color just a bit more so that it had that checkerboard color palette and not these peen tails. Sorry. It's a slay regardless. She is called as top 2 this week, which makes sense for her storyline of needing to figure out how to get good at Drag Race and not just be good at nightclub life. And Morgan this week was causing some friction among the queens. She's someone who runs a tight ship in SoCal. When I first started working in drag, I was told that if Morgan books you, you've made it. That was like a decade ago. And I could tell that her strong professionalism and tight grip on her commitment to high production value was not being met by the other queens. Which, to be fair, Morgan was not the choreographer. Morphine was. If Morgan wanted to control the choreography and have everybody contribute to it, then she should have elected herself to take over the choreo. I thought it was hilarious that Mystique had to be the one to reel in Morgan. In my second position is Morphine Love Dion, coming in memeing the hell out of the fandom. I remember distinctly when this Reddit thread started to go viral, saying that she looked like Frances from A Bug's Life. Memeing a Reddit thread is peak troll behavior and I live for it. In the challenge, I think she branded herself extremely well. She can turn a man even if he says he's straight. She's the queen of Miami. She knows her worth and she will charge you for it. And she can be humorous all at the same time. She understands her branding. And I think she packaged and delivered that well. The fallout of her not winning this, I think, is exactly what producers in reality TV want to have happen. They either want to see you soar to greater heights the next week or completely get in your own head and get in your own way. I personally really liked her look in the performance. That scrunchie in the hair was giving me life because it was so over-exaggerated. Michelle made some comment that it looked like Snow White from the hood. So 2 things on this. 1, Disney doesn't own primary colors. Second, I understand where Michelle might be confused because Snow White is in primary colors, but to my point, they don't own them. And as a recovering Disney adult, Snow White's color blocking is that soft lemon color from the skirt down, not on the top. Snow White's bodice is that royal blue with pops of red on the sleeve. It's not full color blocks. If anything, she was giving that painting. The primary colors with the white and the black stripes. Morphine's look was very clearly stylized and going for that 80s, 90s music video, color blocked, graphic line jumpsuit that all the girlies were wearing back then. Morphine turned the party. And the only reason she was low this week was because her costume wasn't what Michelle wanted, which I think is kind of silly considering that her verse branded her better than Morgan's did. Even if Morgan's costume in the performance, I think, was strong. And on the runway, Morphine looks very sexy in white and gold. The scale of those feathers is insane. Like, what? She looked amazing and really nailed the assignment of paying homage to LA Toya while still making it her own. It's a super slay. And then in my number 1 position is Please Dawn It's Christmas, who majorly broke out and surprised even my expectations. She looked amazing in pink for her entrance look. Period. I love this. No further notes. She was so authentic and honest in her first run in season 16, and I was glad to see the evolution of that, where now she is not afraid to make bold choices. And that is her storyline she's already set up, that she was afraid to go for it last time, but she's not anymore. And she fulfilled her goal, I would say. She got herself into what I think may be a short-lived alliance with Morphine, who was also playing a short game with Lucky. Dawn was hesitant to make this a 3-person alliance, considering that only 2 people get to move to round 2. But mathematically, it makes sense to me to have 1 extra person as a buffer in case maybe only 1 of the 3 of you is in the top that week and gets extra points. The other 2 can then be support to make sure that at least 1 of you goes to round 2. Dawn had the best lines and I think understood the vibe of the song the best and also branded herself immaculately well. Rise and shine, it's the crack of dawn. I'm running this like a marathon. You're never gonna win, sweetie, so there's the door. Got bodied by body, but you know I'm not stressed. I'm a naughty, thoughty hottie. You're a doo-doo clown mess. I am. They worked well at explaining her journey on Drag Race, getting eliminated by Body, but not coming back and letting that be her story. Telling the room that she is there to be catty, shady, bold, and show all the queens where the door is. I thought the look was sexy as hell, super Y2K through a 2026 lens. 2025, I think, is when this was filmed. And the mix of textiles and prints is something that I think only Dawn could pull off because she's got that great eye for color and dimension. On this look, features zebra, cow print, purple sequin, orange and yellow piping on tomato red. Those are insane colors to work with and very difficult to pull off altogether, but she made them work. She stepped up her game fiercely from her last time she was on the show. And for her runway look, she was giving us something unexpected. Seeing her in this burlesque look was very hot. I love her in orange, so sickening. She referenced Pikmin in her confessional, which I love. The details of this are crazy. I love that she's already stretching her aesthetic of what we understand as who Dawn is and is making these bold choices. Plus that mug, ultimate womanity. The top two are called as Morgan and Dawn, and seeing LaToya get celebrated on the show made me very happy. I think she might be the guest judge with the most appearances ever on Drag Race, maybe right next to Cheyenne. I'd have to do some fact checking on that, but I think LaToya's had 4 or 5 appearances. The two of them have to lip sync to Such a Wicked Love for an extra point. Morgan kicked it off with some hot body movement. She does that like nobody else on Drag Race. That's why her 2 of Hearts lip sync is so iconic and remains so iconic. Dawn was super slow-mo. This is called Drag Race, not Drag Walk. And all of this time building up was just to reveal some feather fingers, which she took off very quickly. I love the feather fingers, but it was such a long, drawn out start just for a look at these. And she kept getting sexy with the number, but I think it was over before it started because Morgan was plugged in from the beginning. Morgan was doing floor work and giving sexuality and energy, not being afraid to put some comedy into it as well. When she walked by Dawn and did the like, ooh, PU, I died. The old school queens have this performance sensibility that the new girls just don't have. That is undeniable. That's not shade to Dawn. That's just an overall comment. That's why, in my opinion, queens like Jessica Wilde beat queens like Jan in a lip sync, or Alexis Mateo beat Trinity. Morgan won this lip sync for me as well as for Rue, and she now leads the pack. So scoreboard wise, she has 3 points, Dawn has 2, and then the bottom 4 queens get their MPQ points. Strategy this season is gonna play in very heavy because only 2 get to move on. My episode 2 review will drop very shortly, but in the meantime, let me know what your thoughts were on this episode in the comments below. How you feeling about Orange Bracket so far? Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already if you would like to hear more of my thoughts about All Stars 11. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all on the flip.